On the day when Gu Shiqing regained his memories, I had just discovered 2 lines. A lowly O pregnant? The odds are slimmer than winning the lottery. Gu's mother hurled a check at my face, declaring, "Take the money and be done with my son." I instinctively glanced at Gu Shiqing. The alpha, who had been tender and clingy during his amnesia, now appeared as cold as iron. Is it insufficient? It's enough for you to wash his mark 10 times over. The anxiety that had been suspended in my heart instantly settled back into my abdomen. I merely desired a child. I never stated that I wanted the child's father. 6 months ago, I stumbled upon an exceptionally superior alpha beside a refuse heap. His identity was unknown, and he was gravely injured and suffering from amnesia. I toiled through 3 jobs a day, barely managing to cover his medical expenses. Upon awakening and seeing me, he embraced me passionately, exclaiming, "Wife, I have finally found you." I forcefully pried him off, asserting, "I am not your wife. You are merely a find from my trash pile." I intended to take him to the police station, but he staunchly refused, even threatening to take his own life. Fearing for his safety, I reluctantly brought him back to my dilapidated rental apartment. The amnesiac Gu Shiqing resembled an inquisitive child. "Wife, how can one live in such a tiny space? Wife, how do you manage to eat such dreadful food?" I began to suspect that he was not merely forgetful but rather lacking in intellect. Fortunately, he did not shamelessly rely on me for sustenance. Once he was able to rise from bed, he took the initiative to handle all household chores, washing, cooking, and even providing massages. I believed our mundane days would persist until he regained his memory. However, 2 months ago he entered his sensitive period. The sensitivity period for an exceptionally superior alpha is considerably more perilous than for an ordinary alpha. The potent pheromones proliferate rapidly, enveloping the entire apartment in an impenetrable haze. The top-tier pheromones incited restlessness among surrounding alphas, while omegas were nearly overwhelmed by collective arousal. Gu Shiqing curled up on the bed, buried beneath my clothes, appearing as though he might shatter under the weight of fear and vulnerability. His eyes, reddened from tears, pleaded, "Wife, help me, help me." After transforming into a subpar omega, I had never experienced a heat cycle. My pheromones were bland and unremarkable. Yet, Gu Shiqing effortlessly drew forth my heat. The rich, sandalwood-scented pheromones drove one to madness, intertwining with delicate strands of scent, creating an inseparable bond. Passionate kisses descended like a tempest. Gu Shiqing, in a frenzy, nibbled at my glands, his sharp canines incessantly teasing, relentlessly imploring, "Wife, may I mark you?" I turned my head, tacitly consenting to his advances. The sensitivity period of the superior alpha surged, lasting a full 9 days. Throughout those 9 days, our bodies intertwined, and the tiny apartment was saturated with the essence of pheromones. I felt as though I were submerged in a vast ocean, my body sticky and damp, even needing Gu Shiqing to feed me. Just as I thought I might perish in bed, Gu Shiqing's sensitivity period finally concluded. As he traced the deep mark on my nape, his expression was inscrutable. "Wife, I will take responsibility for you." I ignored his words, for I understood that in his current state of amnesia, his declarations bore no legal weight. When Gu's mother stormed in, I had just confirmed 2 lines on a pregnancy test. I hadn't even had the chance to inform Gu Shiqing. A regal woman accompanied by a cadre of bodyguards encircled the apartment, her gaze towards me as disdainful as one might regard refuse in a sewer. "So, this is how you shamelessly wallow with a subpar omega." Gu Shiqing stiffened, yet unusually did not defend me as he had before. Instead, he lowered his head in silence, seemingly ashamed. Gu's mother scoffed, tossing a check at me. "Take this money and leave my son." I had never anticipated a day when I would be dismissed with a check. The sum was substantial, sufficient to ensure my sustenance for the rest of my life. I instinctively glanced at Gu Shiqing, who was acting strangely today, as if he had suddenly regained his memory. No, I realized I did not truly understand him. Perhaps he had already recovered his memories, only I had failed to notice. Or maybe he had never lost them at all. I dug my nails into my palm, the pain spreading as I scrutinized Gu Shiqing, not wanting to miss a flicker of expression on his face. His demeanor remained unchanged, but his gaze flickered momentarily, as if he had come to a realization. Suddenly resolute, he cast a disdainful glance at me, reminiscent of his mother-esque contemptuous gaze towards garbage. "What? Is it insufficient? This money is enough for you to wash away 10 marks. With the advancement of science and technology, lifelong marking is no longer an unbreakable bond within AO relationships. For merely 2 million, an omega can sever ties with their alpha. Gu's mother offered me 20 million, a generous gesture indeed. Gu Shiqing had expected me to weep and plead for him not to leave, but instead, I quietly tucked the pregnancy test into my pocket and accepted the check from Gu's mother. She was taken aback by my promptness. Do you know what my son's status is? Of course, I was aware. I had known even before finding him. An exceptionally superior alpha, indeed. In modern society, there are 6 genders. Excluding the predominantly numerous betas, alphas and omegas are further classified into 3 tiers based on pheromone levels. Superior, ordinary, and inferior. The lower the tier, the more difficult it is to mark or be marked, and reproductive capabilities diminish. Those above the superior tier are deemed exceptionally superior, akin to celestial beings, their numbers exceedingly rare. Before encountering Gu Shiqing, I had believed such individuals to be mere legends. On the day I transformed into an inferior omega, the doctor had delicately informed me, your pheromone levels are exceptionally low. You may never conceive. His words were veiled, yet I understood, I was likely an exceedingly inferior omega. Subsequently, someone disseminated the news of my inferior status, and due to the difficulty of being marked and conceiving, I was slandered as a promiscuous omega. Even when I proved I had not been marked, the retort, an exceedingly inferior omega will leave no trace even if they indulge, would silence me. In a fit of anger, I retaliated against my defamer, sending them to the hospital. My father, however, deemed my actions shameful and, in an effort to quell the situation, arranged for my expulsion from school. He even brought home an illegitimate child, claiming I could not inherit the Du family legacy due to my inability to bear children, which led to my mother's heart attack and subsequent death. On the day I found Gu Shiqing, I had quarreled with my father and was in the midst of running away from home. I had expected him to search for me, yet, months passed without a single phone call. Even my deactivated phone line remained silent. Thus, upon seeing Gu Shiqing, a thought flickered through my mind. Can an exceptionally superior alpha mark an exceedingly inferior omega and make her pregnant? Since the source of all my troubles stemmed from being an exceedingly inferior omega with inferior genes, perhaps securing a child with exceptional genes could alter my circumstances, rekindle my father's affection, and oust the illegitimate child from our home. With this notion in mind, I took Gu Shiqing home with me. It proved true that exceptional beings are indeed extraordinary. Despite his grave injuries and impaired cognition, within half a month, he was able to rise from bed, and in 3 months, he was hardly distinguishable from an ordinary person. Moreover, his prowess was remarkable. He was quite adept. The infrequency of my visits was largely due to the haunting memory of that one terrifying encounter, which left me feeling weak and trembling at the mere sight of Gu Shiqing. The instant he approached, my instinct was to flee. I had initially contemplated returning on several occasions if this attempt proved fruitless, but unexpectedly, upon discovering my condition, Gu Shiqing regained his memories and decided to head home. As soon as he departed, I made my way to the hospital. There were no unpleasant surprises, only delightful news. The embryo and heartbeat are developing splendidly. I'll schedule your next ultrasound. It's crucial to keep up with your prenatal checkups. Upon leaving the hospital, I promptly exchanged my check for cash, vacated my dilapidated rental, and secured a new, sunlit 2-bedroom apartment. Following a quarrel with my father that led to the suspension of my credit card, I found myself residing in a squalid room while taking care of Gu Shiqing, who was, regrettably, a burden. Now, with a child on the way and funds provided by Gu's mother, I had every reason to treat myself with greater kindness. Once the baby arrives safely, I intend to reclaim what is rightfully mine from the Du family. The old place held no sentimental value. I left with merely 2 articles of clothing, replacing everything else upon moving into my new abode, which I had ordered from the supermarket. My dear friend Wang Lin called me. What are you up to? Want to grab a meal? My treat. Over the past 6 months, he had reached out to me several times, all of which I had declined with various excuses. I was determined to prove my worth, to work diligently to support myself and Gu Shiqing, leaving no time for leisure. However, with Gu Shiqing now gone, I found myself with newfound time and energy to savor life. Sure, send me the location. Wang Lin chose a newly opened private kitchen, reputed for its exquisite flavors, with reservations already booked until the latter half of the year. Naturally, for someone of his means, securing a table was a mere formality, but it was evident he had put thought into it. Upon arrival, I was taken aback to see an unexpected figure, Gu Shiqing. He donned a casual suit, tailored to accentuate his physique, broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, and long, straight legs, as he sauntered past me, arm in arm with an equally affluent omega. The omega exuded his pheromones unabashedly, but they were overshadowed by a more commanding aroma emanating from Gu Shiqing. Oblivious to my presence, he engaged the omega, saying, How many times must I remind you to rein in your pheromones? What would you do if I weren't by your side? The Omega's voice was as sweet as his pheromones. Giggling in reply, then don't just vanish for half a year like last time. What choice did I have? If I hadn't feared that inferior Omega would latch onto me, I would have returned sooner. A thunderous realization struck me. Gu Shiqing had indeed retained his memories. While I had exhausted all my savings for his medical expenses, he had been scheming on how to distance himself from me while I devoted myself tirelessly to his care. It was true that as the third heir of the Gu family, a paragon of luxury and an exceptional alpha, any title he cast aside would draw eager attention. Moreover, the debt of gratitude for saving his life was a precarious matter. Mismanagement could lead to public scandal, tarnishing his reputation. It was far simpler to conclude our saga dramatically. Yet I found myself utterly indifferent. I wiped my face, the mist clouding my vision and a wave of emotion welling in my throat. I did not harbor feelings for Gu Shiqing. However, it was impossible to deny that after spending half a year together, with him affectionately calling me his wife, I was not entirely devoid of sentiment. Now, to learn that it had all been an act was a bitter pill to swallow. When Wang Lin laid eyes on me, he was momentarily stunned, struggling to find his voice. What happened to you? Did you go to Africa to mine for gold? Once, I was the epitome of grace and elegance, using only the finest hair care products, with slender fingers and a bright smile, a dream for countless young Omegas even before my differentiation. Now my skin was darkened, my hair disheveled, obscuring my eyes, my demeanor somber, hands marred with cuts and calluses, a testament to the harshness of life. After enduring 6 months of hardship, even the most refined among us must shed their former skin. I could hardly empathize with the person I once was. Had I known, I would have borrowed money from Wang Lin instead of laboriously subjecting myself to becoming a laughingstock. Thankfully, the worst was behind me. Indeed, I've been working black market jobs for half a year. You owe me a proper feast. TSK, let me see if you've lost weight. Wang Lin, with a playful grin, moved closer to me, inspecting me with a teasing touch. Before our differentiation, we often engaged in such playful banter. However, since those events unfolded post-differentiation, we had not seen each other for quite some time, and yet our reunion felt entirely natural. Just then, a large hand pulled me closer. I found myself enveloped in a warm embrace, familiar pheromones bursting forth around me. The overwhelming pressure of an alpha's pheromones caused a visible shift in the expressions of everyone present. A voice, seething with anger, echoed above. Who is he? I pushed Gu Shiqing away, my face a mask of confusion. Haven't we settled our differences? What are you doing now? Gu Shiqing faltered, then grew agitated, scrutinizing Wang Lin with disdain. This person is unworthy. His looks are mediocre, his physique lacking, and his pheromone level is utterly ordinary. If you seek an alpha, shouldn't you aim for someone better? What business is it of yours? With my closest friend insulted, flames of anger ignited within me as I provocatively draped my arm around Wang Lin's shoulders. What does it matter if his pheromone level is high? I happen to like him just the way he is. Gu Shiqing froze in astonishment. I ignored him and walked away with Wang Lin, out of his sight. I apologize for dragging you into this. I briefly recounted my tumultuous history with Gu Shiqing to Wang Lin, omitting the details of my pregnancy. Wang Lin's indignation flared as he listened. Old Du, whatever troubles you face, count on me. I'll stand by your side. I smiled and agreed, yet I had no intention of truly involving him, as I could not afford to pull Wang Lin into my spiraling chaos. I believed I would never cross paths with Gu Shiqing again. Yet he seemed to haunt me, appearing unexpectedly whenever I ventured out. He remained silent, simply standing there, observing me intently. At times, I even sensed someone trailing me, but whenever I turned around, all seemed normal. I knew it was Gu Shiqing. On one occasion, I halted my steps. What do you want from me? Gu Shiqing appeared out of sorts, neither the indifferent figure from that fateful day nor the arrogant persona from before. Instead, he resembled the man I had known during our 6 months together. His eyes were rimmed with red, disheveled black hair clinging to his damp forehead, his face marred with a sense of grievance. Wife, I feel so lost. I was taken aback, glancing at the information on my phone that Wang Lin had helped me find. Pheromone disorder. As he approached, I instinctively prepared to flee, but he enveloped me in his arms. His pheromones invaded my senses, infiltrating every pore. His cool lips captured my breath, and Gu Shiqing mumbled incoherently, wife, wife. I found myself unable to escape. Instead, he grew increasingly bold, his hands slipping beneath my clothing. My breath hitched. This was not good. I am over 3 months pregnant. and my baby bump has begun to show. This child belongs solely to me, Du Sheng. However, should Gu Shiqing discover this, he possesses the right to take my child away from me. I do not know where I found the strength, but I pressed down his mischievous hands and kissed his earlobe, my voice sultry and alluring. Shall we change locations? Gu Shiqing was as excited as a dog, sniffing around my nape. The faint, bland scent of my omega pheromones, to him, was akin to a rare delicacy, utterly irresistible. The air was thick with the scent of sandalwood pheromones, fluctuating in intensity, the overwhelming pressure making even the birds perched on the utility poles unable to withstand it, causing them to plummet to the ground. I secured the doors and windows and activated the ventilation system. Gu Shiqing immediately lunged at me, kissing my nape, his sharp teeth grazing against my skin. Before I could react, a sudden pain shot through my nape as his incisors pierced the gland, and a rich, suffocating wave of pheromones surged into me. My vision blurred, my mouth slightly ajar, gasping for air like a dying beast. Wife, kiss me, he murmured. Gu Shiqing's body temperature was frighteningly hot, and in my daze, I found myself kissing his cool lips. Then my phone rang. As I reached for it, a scorching hand snatched it from my grasp, inadvertently answering the call. Wang Lin's voice echoed through. Du Sheng, run. Gu Shiqing. The call was abruptly cut off as the phone shattered into pieces. Wife, don't listen, don't believe him. You don't need to worry about anything. Gu Shiqing's words were drowned beneath the surging tide of emotion. When I regained consciousness, his gaze had cleared. His thumb gently brushed over the mark on my nape, and his eyes were filled with an inscrutable depth. Didn't I tell you to wash away the mark? Why is it still there? An omega marked by an alpha would always recognize the alpha that marked them, and during their heat, without the alpha's mark, they would suffer greatly. Even suppressants would prove ineffective. Gu Shiqing no longer wanted me and had even given me money. Logically and emotionally, I should have removed that mark. Yet, I was pregnant and unable to undergo surgery. Not wanting to raise his suspicions, I brushed his hand away and replied coldly, I don't need your reminders. I will wash it off when I have the time. A flicker of pain crossed Gu Shiqing's eyes, quickly concealed. He lowered his head slightly, his soft black hair swaying before his forehead, and for a fleeting moment, I felt as though I had returned to our cohabitation days. However, he resolutely stood up, leaving behind a final remark. You'd better keep your promise. And he departed. I grabbed a pillow and hurled it at him, the pillow thudding against the closed door. Closing my eyes, I inhaled deeply, trying to suppress the emotions bubbling within me. Gu Shiqing, you bastard. If he did not wish to be with me, why did he provoke me? Less than half a month later, Gu Shiqing sought me out once more. I truly did not understand how he could be so shameless, clinging to me before bed, tearfully calling me wife, and then, after getting out of bed, walking away in silence with a sullen face. The doctor recommended that I absorb more alpha pheromones for the benefit of the fetus, so I allowed him to continue visiting, with the only stipulation that he must not touch my belly. In those moments of intimacy, I often wished that Gu Shiqing would love me like this for eternity. But I knew that was impossible. He sought me only because of his pheromone disorder, unable to control his sensitivity. As his marked omega, I was the only one he could turn to. Sickness would eventually find a cure, just as I knew that he and I would inevitably drift apart. Once again, Gu Shiqing awoke from his sensitivity phase, his expression still dark and brooding. Sensing he was about to mention washing off the mark again, I quickly interrupted. Don't come here anymore. The doctor said I must remain unmarked for 6 months before the surgery. I've already scheduled it for 6 months from now. After the surgery, we will have no further ties. Gu Shiqing's expression froze, a mist gathering in his eyes, but my vision blurred, making it difficult to see clearly. I had promised him I would wash away the mark. He should have been pleased, right? Half a month ago, I returned home. I learned that Gu's mother had arranged a marriage for him with a distinguished omega to remedy his pheromone disorder. The unfortunate twist was that this person was my half-brother. My father had employed certain tactics to swap my identity with his, rendering me the unacknowledged illegitimate child. To silence me, he offered all the shares under my mother's name. In another half-month, during the engagement banquet between the Gu and Du families, Gu Shiqing would discover that I was the illegitimate child of the Du family. Once Gu Shiqing marked the distinguished omega, his pheromone disorder would be alleviated, and I would once again be discarded after being used. I did not wish to endure further humiliation. Thus, I decided to bring this to an end. The engagement banquet for Gu Shiqing was grandly held. Prominent figures from the capital flocked to the venue, luxury cars lining the hotel entrance, each worth millions. Media outlets were also invited to broadcast this opulent union. Logically, my family did not belong in the same league as the Gu family. Otherwise, when Gu's mother had expressed her disdain for me, I would not have accepted the betrayal with such composure, but would have hurled the check back at her while berating her. Yet, who could blame me for being the one who had evolved into a distinguished Omega? Though not as exceptional as Gu Shiqing, I was still a paragon among the elite. I took a glass of juice and retreated to a corner to sip. Wang Lin approached, scrutinizing me from head to toe. Upon seeing that I was not only unharmed but had also gained a bit of weight, he visibly relaxed. "What's wrong with you? Is something off with me?" I inquired, puzzled. "How can you even ask? Why did you hang up on me the last time I called? I heard that Gu Shiqing was in a sensitivity phase and was looking for you." I nearly panicked. If I hadn't heard that his sensitivity phase had ended, I would have thought he defound you and harmed you. I recalled Gu Shiqing's behavior during that time, my cheeks flushing. I had indeed come close to being harmed. Wang Lin grumbled about my lack of response to messages, then fixed his gaze on my belly, his eyes filled with curiosity. "Why do I feel like you've gained quite a bit of weight? Last time we hadn't seen each other for half a year. You looked like you had just returned from mining in Africa. Now it's only been 2 months and you've already plumped up?" He reached out as if to lift my shirt. I quickly grasped his hand. "Don't mess around." The crowd stirred with excitement. Wang Lin and I paused our playful banter, glancing toward the center of the gathering. Gu Shiqing stood there in a well-tailored dark gray suit. His hair neatly swept back, revealing his exquisite features. Beside him was a young Omega clad in a matching gown, radiating joy, enveloped in happiness and proudly accepting the envy and blessings of those around. That was my half-brother, Du Qizhu. Before the engagement banquet commenced, the couple casually mingled with the guests. Yet it was primarily the elite who rushed to greet Gu Shiqing. It seemed he sensed something, suddenly casting his gaze in my direction. I raised my glass and downed its contents in one go. "Yes, here." Wang Lin immediately straightened his posture, entering a state of combat readiness, poised to confront Gu Shiqing at any moment. The rhythmic sound of polished shoes echoed against the floor. Gu Shiqing halted before me, his eyes ablaze with a crimson hue, resembling both an interrogation and a roar. Why are you here?" Gu Shiqing had lost control. His overwhelming pheromones engulfed the entire engagement venue like a tempest, rendering all but the beta, who, possessing slightly weaker perception, could maintain some semblance of combat power, motionless. The alpha and omega were paralyzed under the weight of his pheromones. To make matters worse, some attendees succumbed to their heat in the venue. Du Qizhu, positioned behind Gu Shiqing, found himself weakened by the pheromonal pressure, his knees giving way as he sank to the ground, curling up in agony. "Shiqing, stop!" Even Wang Lin, who stood protectively before me, exhibited signs of distress, his face turning a deep shade of purple. Gu Shiqing's mother, positioned at the center of the banquet hall, cried out in a piercing voice, "Gu Shiqing, cease this at once." Everyone was rendered immobile by Gu Shiqing's pheromones, save for myself, who remained unaffected. Gu Shiqing fixed an intense gaze upon me, his bloodshot eyes shimmering with unshed tears. He murmured, "I have complied with your every request. I have been obedient. Why? The alarm blared throughout the banquet hall. The ceiling's fire suppression system activated, dousing water that soaked Gu Shiqing's meticulously styled hair. Drops trickled down from the corners of his eyes. The entire engagement party had devolved into a hellish scene. Guests could only struggle in pain, wailing and pleading with the superior alpha to retract his pheromones and grant them respite. The oppression of hierarchy knows no reason. Beneath the superior lay mere ants. I reached out, grasping his trembling hands, prying his fingers apart, intertwining them with my own. "Gu Shiqing, come with me." I led Gu Shiqing upstairs, casually pushing open a guest room door. He bit down fiercely on my gland, saturating me with a deluge of pheromones. "Wife, what should I do? Wife, do not leave me." He was crying again. Since the onset of his pheromone disorder, he often wept in my presence. Yet, once the sensitive period passed, he reverted to his cold, unyielding persona as the young master of the Gu family, unhesitatingly withdrawing from my side. "Gu Shiqing, kiss me." I buried my fingers in his hair, holding him tightly. This was the final time, I reminded myself. Gu Shiqing was still asleep when I reluctantly rose from the bed, my body aching, my legs nearly buckled beneath me. His sensitive period had struck with a vengeance, and I had unwittingly let him touch my abdomen. As long as he retained his memory, he would uncover the truth. It was clear I could no longer remain in the capital. Descending the stairs, I found the banquet hall below had been tidied up, and the guests had been taken to the hospital. The hotel, once bustling with life, now lay desolate due to the incident. I purchased a ticket to the southern region. Do not ask why I did not venture abroad. The answer is simply culinary incompetence. The climate in the south proved to be even more humid than anticipated. With summer's arrival, the heat became unbearable, compelling me to remain indoors in the air-conditioned comfort. My landlord, a plump beta auntie, frequently brought seasonal fruits for me to enjoy. Noticing me engrossed in the news, she set down a basket of fresh peaches and struck up a conversation. Are you following this too? I was up all night reading. It left me unable to sleep. How could parents be so cruel? To ensure their child becomes an alpha, they administer hormones at such a young age. What good is becoming a superior alpha if it's not normal? If it were me, I would never subject my child to such suffering. She rambled on, and I poured her a glass of water. She accepted it, then glanced at my round belly with envy, asking, your belly is quite large now. When is your due date? Mid-next month. The auntie sked, then mentioned the topic of hiring a nanny. Upon learning I had yet to find one, she volunteered, honestly, you shouldn't bother with a nanny. Let me help you with the baby. It's not easy for you to manage alone without an alpha. Save some money and get your mark cleansed before finding another. I had informed her when I first moved in that my alpha had passed away. I did not agree, merely asking her to keep an eye out for suitable nannies. True, it's not quite right to entrust my child to a stranger. Though she expressed regret, she understood. Suddenly, she recalled something and added, be cautious when you're out. I heard there's a lowly omega nearby who, being unable to conceive, grows envious of pregnant women and purposely collides with them. Do not walk alone at night. As the heat of the evening dissipated, the night breeze began to blow, bringing with it a sense of tranquility. I strolled down the street, my belly prominent, inhaling the delightful aromas from the street vendors, salivating uncontrollably. Ignoring the landlord's admonitions, I ventured out for a walk. I was not one to stay indoors. Due to the climate, I could not venture out during the day, and with the night air so refreshing, I feared I might succumb to depression if I did not take a few steps outside.
Chilled seedless watermelon, 399 yuan per pound.
Chilled seedless watermelon. Handmade lemon tea. Handmade lemon tea. The street vendors called out enthusiastically, and I found myself equally excited. After a leisurely stroll, I purchased 2 fresh coconuts before sauntering back home. As I entered the community, I sensed someone trailing behind me. I quickened my pace and they matched it. I slowed, and they did too. The distance from the community gate to my building was considerable, and most residents had already turned off their lights, leaving the area shrouded in darkness and an eerie silence. I couldn't help but recall the landlord's warning from earlier. My heart raced with anxiety. Could I truly be facing a deranged individual? With that thought, I hastened my steps towards my building. To my dismay, as I quickened my pace, so did the figure behind me. My heart raced. I bolted. To my shock, the person behind me also took off in pursuit. A scream nearly escaped my throat, but I stifled it, concerned about disturbing the peace at such a late hour. I cursed myself for being so cautious. What if I truly were being chased by a pervert? By the time I realized the danger, it might be too late. Just as I felt the pursuer closing in, a figure suddenly emerged around the corner. I rushed toward them, no longer alone, and wondered if the assailant would dare approach me. Upon reaching the individual, I paused and glanced back to see if the pursuer had followed. At that moment, a hand suddenly shoved me. I exhaled in relief, having let my guard down at the most vulnerable moment, only to be caught off balance and topple towards the ground. Watch out! A familiar voice rang out as a figure sprinted towards me, catching me just before I fell. Gu Shiqing glared at the one who had pushed me, growling, "Get lost!" The individual, realizing their cover was blown, fled in haste. Once assured I was unharmed, Gu Shiqing released his grip and, without a word, turned to leave. I grasped his hand tightly. "Don't you have anything to say to me?" Gu Shiqing halted but did not turn back, his body rigid, as he replied in a muffled tone, "No." I released his hand, impatiently uttering a few words, "You should leave too." Gu Shiqing departed in haste. Returning home past midnight, sleep eluded me, prompting me to revisit the news I had perused earlier that day. The Gu family was embroiled in a scandal involving human experimentation, with relevant authorities initiating an investigation. The exceptionally superior alpha was the result of human intervention. The controlling nature of Madame Gu created an oppressive familial environment. The incident surrounding the Gu family's engagement, the mysterious disappearance of Gu Shiqing, The previous engagement mishap had sent numerous prominent figures in the capital to the hospital, leading to the revelation of Gu Shiqing's troubling condition. A thorough investigation uncovered that Gu Shiqing had been administered a hormone known as a pheromone inducer since childhood. This substance was intended to assist inferior alphas in marking omegas and was prohibited for use prior to differentiation. Unbeknownst to many, Gu's mother had clandestinely injected her son for over a decade. Although Gu Shiqing ultimately differentiated into an exceptionally superior alpha as she had hoped, his glands suffered severe complications from the excessive hastening. Among these was a condition known as pheromone disorder. I first encountered Gu Shiqing not amidst refuge, but within the confines of a high school campus. My initial finding of him revealed a frail, feverish boy, his arms dotted with needle marks. The Gu family's bodyguards scoured the vicinity for him. He struggled to keep his heavy eyelids open, gazing at me with a pitiful expression, pleading, "Senior, please don't hand me over. I truly cannot endure another injection." He was as light as a sheet of paper, and though I could easily crumple him in my grasp, I could not bring myself to do so. I embraced him, seeking refuge in the equipment room of the gymnasium. I fetched cold water to sponge his body and lower his temperature. Delirious from the fever, he murmured, "Mommy, it hurts. I will become an excellent alpha, but I don't want to be injected anymore. Mommy, once I become an alpha, will my brothers come back?" His cries for his mother were accompanied by tears streaming down his cheeks. Later, he awoke, burying his face in the crook of my shoulder, inhaling deeply. "Senior, are you an omega? You smell so good. When I become an alpha, can I pursue you?" I had anticipated his pursuit, yet what I encountered instead was a deluge of campus bullying. After his differentiation, Gu Shiqing had grown significantly taller, his features more defined, and his physique considerably sturdier. Had it not been for the media's revelation of his childhood photographs, I would not have recognized him as the same pitiful child I once knew. The transformation was monumental. Whether there were ulterior motives behind my expulsion, I could not ascertain. However, Gu Shiqing undoubtedly understood. He had been confined and subjected to forced treatments for 2 months, yielding no results. After once more overpowering his parents and a host of bodyguards and doctors, he escaped from the hospital, instinctively seeking me out. Yet, he remained hidden in the shadows, unwilling to reveal himself. Had I not encountered danger today, he might have continued to evade detection until his sensitive period prompted his emergence. Reflecting on this, my teeth clenched in frustration. "Gu Shiqing, you absolute scoundrel!" I resolved to locate Gu Shiqing and ascertain whether his mother was implicated in the events of the past, and whether her cessation of her relentless pursuit of me was linked to him. However, when someone is intent on evading you, finding them becomes an insurmountable challenge. I scoured the neighborhood in vain, ultimately succumbing to exhaustion. As the ambulance arrived, I strained to lift my head, addressing the throng of onlookers with all the strength I could muster. "Gu Shiqing, if you do not come out now, you shall never hear my son call you father." Upon my return to the hospital room, I found the caregiver patiently instructing Gu Shiqing on how to feed a baby. Cradling the infant, Gu Shiqing stood as still as a statue, terrified that any movement might cause the fragile life in his arms to dissipate like morning dew. I angrily patted the bedding. "Speak." When we cohabited, he was often quite talkative, albeit at times grating. After our separation, during his sensitive periods, he would whisper sweet nothings in my ear. Yet this time his silence was poignant. Hearing my call, Gu Shiqing entrusted the baby to the caregiver. His eyes reddened as he gazed at me. "Does it hurt?" "Not as much as the day you struck me with a check." Gu Shiqing began to weep again. I gently wiped away his tears, feeling a sense of helplessness. "At your age, why do you cry so easily? Can you tell me if my expulsion was orchestrated by your family?" I had done nothing but become an inferior omega, yet became the target of bullying and slander, akin to a mouse scurrying across the street. After my expulsion, my attempts to return to school were thwarted by my father. Gu Shiqing nodded. "They intended to use you for experimentation." In that moment, everything crystallized for me. My involvement in Gu Shiqing's affairs had drawn the Gu family's attention, who discovered that I was a particularly unique inferior omega and sought to experiment on me. Gu Shiqing must have fought fiercely and compromised on certain matters for the Gu family to relent. "Gu Shiqing, how old are you?" 19. While I lamented my expulsion and succumbed to despair after my mother's death, that 14-year-old boy had silently protected me for 5 years without my knowledge. The day I discovered Gu Shiqing in the trash heap, he had just differentiated, suffering from pheromone disorder. His injuries had been sustained during desperate struggles with bodyguards. Guided by instinct, He traversed much of the city, collapsing in the refuge just as I was about to pass by. Upon awakening and seeing me, his first words were, "Wife, I finally found you." After the investigation's results were revealed, all individuals associated with the Gu family were apprehended, and their family business projects were halted, with all illicit gains confiscated. After Madame Gu was imprisoned, I visited her with Dudu. Dudu bore a striking resemblance to Gu Shiqing, with large, bright eyes, a delicate nose and dark, twinkling irises, quietly sipping from a bottle. Upon seeing him, Madame Gu sprang to her feet, only to be restrained by the guards. "Isn't he adorable? He's the child of Gu Shiqing and me." Madame Gu's eyes widened in disbelief as she stammered. "Aren't you an inferior Omega? How can you give birth? With such a large child here, do you think I can't?" Madame Gu seemed profoundly shaken, struggling to regain her composure. After a long pause, she lamented. "Had I known then, I should not have listened to Gu Shiqing and let you go." When she encountered me in the slums, she had contemplated what to do if Gu Shiqing and I refused to part. However, she had not anticipated Gu Shiqing's cold indifference, nor my own avarice. Believing no misfortune would arise, she permitted me to use money to erase my mark instead of abducting me back to the laboratory to extract the combined pheromones from my glands for research. That opportunity would never present itself again. Oh, by the way, I turned back before departing, picking up the phone to address Madame Gu on the other side of the glass. "Gu Shiqing and I have brought his 2 beta brothers back to the country. You can watch us live happily from hell." Exiting the prison, I found Gu Shiqing leaning against a sports car. As I emerged, he hurried over, taking Dudu from my arms and planting a kiss on my cheek. "Come on, my brother has prepared a feast. Let us go home for dinner." The end of the tale. Thank you for listening. I look forward to our next story together.